MPs accused Treasury of unrealistic budget. The lawmakers up in arms over public debt versus returns from projects. We'll be talking about that later on. I can see here the chairman of the National Assembly's Budget and Appropriations Committee, Mr. Kimani Ichung'wah, who is in studio, accused the Treasury of failing to adhere to the debt management strategy paper, a move that has led to accruing of more debt to fund huge capital infrastructure investments. So, to make that discussion, we have Chris Omala, Member of Parliament from Kiminini. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Kimani Ichung'wah, Member of Parliament for Kikuyu and Chair of the Budget Committee. Karibu sana.
Asante.
And congratulations for waking up early.
Thank you. Especially on a Monday morning.
Yes, I'm not saying it's rare. And Anthony Oluoch, Member of Parliament for Mathare. Karibu sana to the show. We were expecting Hilary Kosgei from Kipkelen West. We hope he makes it. But the conversation continues. Let's begin with that fact that over the weekend, on Friday rather, we saw the Cabinet Secretary for Infrastructure, Transport and Urban Development as well as Housing, James Macharia, saying that for now the standard gauge railway will terminate at Naivasha. Understandably, the loan, or is it a grant of 368 billion shillings, could not go through from China. Let's listen into what the CS had to say in as far as the standard gauge railway is concerned.
What is urgent right now is to do the connectivity in Naivasha. Because, my dear, we have the MGR going all the way to Malaba, Kampala, which is still active. And so what we are saying is, make that line a lot more viable by connecting it to the SGR in Naivasha. Make sure that connectivity is done so that we do not lose any time. And what we have as number one priority is to make sure that the goods, when they get to Naivasha, they do not actually get marooned in Naivasha. What is important is to make sure that from day one, we can have that connectivity. So all we are doing is actually creating a transshipment point in Naivasha from SGR to MGR. Because even when you do the SGR, we still do have to do that transshipment. You have to do the transshipment. It is not something which we are saying either or. We are going to do both anyway.
That's the Cabinet Secretary for Transport and Infrastructure. What was the idea? Kimani Ichung'wah, what was the plan? Were we to proceed on with the SGR until Kisumu, or when did this change?
I think actually the SGR Kituku, from my understanding, was that it was to go all the way to Kampala and hopefully onward to Kigali and hopefully maybe Burundi and maybe even to the Congo to open up the entire East African and Great Lakes region. However, I think the question we are discussing now is the timelines. When was that to be done? And I think the Cabinet Secretary has been quite clear that there was really no timeline. And I think this debate has come about because somebody in some rally somewhere on a roadside just decided to be in government, decided to make government pronouncements, whereas you're not in government. The Cabinet Secretary was quite clear.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about Raila Odinga, of course, nobody else. He's the one who made a public pronouncement that he was going to borrow money. I don't know on behalf of who is who.
Wasn't that true?
Who is Raila Odinga in government? I think I would have, if you ask me, because I saw the tweet by Nzioka Waita from State House. If you ask me who to believe between Raila Odinga and Nzioka Waita, I think I have a better reflection of history and who the two people are. Nzioka Waita has been a very good professional, even from the time he was in Safaricom. Chooses what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. Raila Odinga is a politician who will say anything to please people in the villages and on the roadsides. And I think Raila Odinga was just making a political statement to please the people of Kisumu and the Nyanza region and explain he's going accompanying the president on this trip.
But let's be
not to be seen as a joyride anyway, and justifiably. The official communication from government ought to come from government sources.
Okay.
Raila Odinga is
let's be contextual here, because I think on the 3rd of September 2018, the government went to, or government delegation went to China during the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation. And part of the mission was for the government of Kenya to procure 380 billion shillings in terms of a loan or a grant, I don't know the specific terms. And they were told by the Chinese government that they needed to have a feasibility study. So it was expected that once the feasibility study is out, then the Chinese government would consider granting whatever Kenya was asking for. Now it appears that is not coming through.
Gituku, and has the government of Kenya told us the feasibility study is out? If you listen to the cabinet secretary, he's been very clear that there must be viability of the line, and he's not told us that they have finished with the viability study. Nobody in government communicated that we are going to look for money for SGR. Two, Gituku, you must realize that as much as we have plans, our government has plans to have the line go all the way to Kisumu and hopefully to Kampala. That must be on the backdrop of the viability of that line, because you can't just invest money and more so borrowed money into a project that you are not certain of its viability. And that's why even the Chinese are asking you, like any other financier, if you were to build a house today for commercial purposes, the bank, whichever bank it is, will ask you for the viability of that project. Therefore, the Chinese financiers asking for feasibility studies to see how viable is this project to extend it all the way to Kisumu. Remember, if you extend this line all the way to Kisumu or probably even Malaba or wherever that will terminate, as Macharia says, there still need to be interconnectivity with the metric gauge railway, because the Ugandan side are yet to do their part. Therefore, the viability of this line is to look at it in its totality, not just within the Kenyan boundaries.
All right.
Two, and my last point on that, look at, and I think you are with me in the Public Investments Committee. You are covering our meeting with the Public Investments Committee in the year 2013, 2014 to 2015, when we looked at the issue of SGR. And you remember us being told that almost 70% of cargo from Mombasa terminates in Nairobi or within the country. The bulk of it being in Nairobi. That tells you the most commercially viable line was Mombasa, Nairobi, because that's where the bulk of the cargo is going to. And this line can only pay itself not on passengers but on cargo.
On cargo.
Honorable Kimani, just a very quick thought, because you say that you'd rather at this point listen to the Chief of Staff, Zio Kawaita, as opposed to Honorable Raila Odinga saying that they did not go for the 368 billion loan. Nevertheless, then why is it that James Macharia then came out to say that, listen, even though the grant hasn't come through, what we will do to make sure that life continues, work continues, we'll find a way of attaching both railways and other viable solutions. If they were not going to get the loan, why would James Macharia then say that?
I think James Macharia was explaining in the backdrop of what Raila Odinga had already pronounced himself on. And maybe where I would fault government communications probably is why not say this at the moment it was put out in the public that President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga were going to borrow money from China for SGR. Because I think by the time the president organizes to leave this country for that Road and Belt conference and meetings in China, there was already an itinerary of what he was going to do. There was already a program of the issues he was going to cover. And government nobody in government, not Waita, not Macharia, because even you guys in the media had the liberty to talk to Macharia before and ask him to confirm whether or not they were going to seek for funding for SGR. And if you ask me, my own personal view is that probably this is not the time. And I would say it's probably not the time to look for more funding for SGR extension at this particular time.
We'll come to that, but Honorable Oloch, what do you make of this? That this is a government that wanted to have the line move all the way from Mombasa to the border so that Uganda can take it up. Now we have this explanation. Are you convinced?
You know, first of all, I do not believe myself that government, and by government I define the Jubilee government. I think for the record, Raila Odinga is not in government. Raila Odinga has not said that he plays any role in government. He does not co-run this government with the president. So I think it is a misnomer that anybody wants to ascribe the successes of this government or its failures to Raila Odinga. I have not seen that tweet, and I don't believe that Raila made a statement to say that he is going to get a loan. Number two, I doubt that President Uhuru would leave Nairobi to go to China on an agreement he did not know they were going to sign. So I don't think SGR or that loan was an issue on the table. And that's why I think Waita's statement really is the true position. Having said that, the issue about viability, I think it's very interesting that people in Jubilee, and my friend Ichungwa here, would choose to tweak the issue of viability because it's going between Naivasha and Kisumu. The issue of viability has been a question even between Mombasa and Naivasha itself. And I'm sure he will tell you off-cuff that the sustainability, off-cuff I am sure he will tell you, he will tell you that the question of the viability of Mombasa, both in terms of the cargo, and we have the statistics, I think we've run them here before, how much in terms of returns has SGR brought. And I think this needs to be looked on beyond the question of the immediate viability as of this time. I think it is more long-term, and the connectivity between Naivasha and Kisumu, and then onward to Kampala, is something that speaks to the question of opening up the regional trade, regional transport, speaking to the Lake Victoria, and there is a large master plan, which myself I am privy to, about how we want to revive lake transport within the Lake Victoria region. There is the issue of the ring road. There is the issue of the old tourist circuit that used to run not only between the Kisumu ports itself, but up to the Congo and the other East African communities. So this is something that we were always going to look at, not in terms of short term, but I think long term. And also being able to open up not only the parts of this country, but the rest of this country, especially countries that have historically suffered in terms of underdevelopment. So I think that's the question that we needed to be able to look at in terms of the question of SGR.
I mean, Dr. Chris, you look at this scenario, and despite the fact that, yes, the Chief of Staff Nzioka said that, listen, we did not go to China for the extension of the funding. Nevertheless, will the success of the SGR in terms of viability, as Honorable Antonio Luoch is talking about, will the success of it only be viable if it's looked at as the East African Community Project? Only if Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda also step in? Even if tomorrow China did come out and say, listen, we're not going to give you that 368 billion.
Yeah, thank you very much. And first allow me to congratulate Eliud Kipchoge and Bridget Kosgei for making Kenya proud on winning the London Marathon. I think this is something that they've done very well. And I appreciate the newspapers that have put it on the headline. I can see Standard has done that, which is very good. But I can see Daily Nation, still politics.
No, but it's still there.
Yeah,
look at the lower part of the paper.
Compared to this, I'm trying to... So
wow, they have an editorial team that makes decisions, but that's not the focus of this debate.
And maybe this is a lesson that the media should focus on the good things as opposed to focusing on 24/7 politics. That aside, now coming to the SGR, I sat in the Committee of Public Investments Committee, and I want you to look at the reflect on the systems theory, the open systems theory, just like your body. You know, you must have an inlet and an outlet. So we know very well that the SGR concept, the issue of viability to me, as far as I'm concerned, actually it is there. From the traditional, how the railway line was built, from Mombasa to Kisumu to Uganda. Most of the goods come from outside the country. They come in this country through the port of Mombasa. And once they come in, we expect those goods, not even the way they are raw materials, but even finished products, that to go to Uganda. You know that Uganda is one of our leading business partners. You need to know that. And if it's a leading business partner, obviously, there are goods that are produced here, they are exported to Uganda. And for you to go to Uganda, it opens up Africa. You go to Burundi, Kigali. So that route, to me, is of economic value. It's actually very, very important. So the success of the issue here is, the issue is in production, there's something called economies of scale.
Right.
If you have higher productivity, obviously, the cost of production goes down because of the principle of economies of scale. So obviously, to me, I know very well the initial plan, because I sat in the committee of PIC, where Honorable Ichungwa was the vice chair, and we were told, because we had the Minister of Transport, we had the railway line, and the issue of going up to Kisumu to Uganda was there. And they were to borrow in the second phase. So in the initial plan, yes, that was the idea. And to me, it makes economic sense. The only question I'm asking myself, the significance of Naivasha. Why Naivasha? Why is it that it was not somewhere here around Nairobi, maybe around Gong or Kikuyu? You know, the questions are, why Naivasha?
But we are told that there's a special economic zone to be put
the
up in
Naivasha concept was, it was to be extended to open up Kenya. Remember Kenya, there's entry of raw materials coming through the port of Mombasa. It will come to Nairobi. Of course, 70% come to Nairobi because subsequently it is exiting through Uganda. And Uganda is our leading business partner. So if it's our leading business partner, obviously we have exchange of goods. And we saw it the other day that the president of Uganda, they were trying to get something maybe around Naivasha for purposes of holding their cargo, you know, because they rely on Kenya. So to me, I thought that was a holding point for subsequent or onward submission to Uganda.
Right. So are we saying that the success of this project, SGR, is only going to be dependent on the EAC, that's the East African Community?
You know, when I spoke about economies of scale, and this is business between countries, of course, when you want to partner with Uganda being our leading partner, obviously it must go to Malaba. Yeah. It must go to Malaba. To me, there's economic value.
So you're questioning why Naivasha?
Why Naivasha? The issue is why Naivasha? Why not Kikuyu? So I thought
why not Naivasha?
No. You know, Naivasha, I thought, because it's on the way to Kisumu. So the issue is this. I think the government needs to come out clearly because Kenyans have a right to information. Okay. And they need to tell us what was the initial plan. So we are hearing from rumors here and there. It's because we're also having difficulty in servicing this commercial. Actually, it's a commercial loan that we're getting from China.
All right. Dr. Chris, let me read you an excerpt of what Nzioka Waita had to say, that whilst making it clear that the government of Kenya did not discuss any funding proposals for the extension of the SGR at this meeting, it is very critical to state that at this point the SGR project is a regional project and the complexities in negotiating its completion involve several countries, and securing financing for its completion could take several years of intricate negotiation. So I'm just wondering, at the point that we kicked off and invested in this project, I recall that a few years ago we had Uganda saying that they are not going to build the SGR, they are reverting to the meter gauge railway to improve it. Were we fixed sort of by the region?
I think Gituku, the tweet in a lot of Kizungu Mingi by Waita says it all, and that's why I told you I choose to believe Waita than believe Raila Odinga. Because as Chris says, its viability in terms of extension all the way to the rest of the region depends on whether our East African partners are also on board, because it will make no point just having an SGR all the way to the border and maybe Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi are not coming on board. Don't forget there is also a lot of peer envy and sibling rivalry between our East African states, and Kenya inevitably suffers a lot under this kind of scenario. Remember the pipeline, the crude oil pipeline, or what happened between ourselves as a country, Uganda and Sudan, and you saw Uganda getting out of the deal to have the pipeline through Kenya to move to Tanzania. The same could happen. And that's why Waita is telling you that it is a complex thing for the region. Number two, my colleague here, Anthony Olwoch, is a member of parliament for Mathare, but I'm certain, very certain, that he understands very well the Luo language. And Raila Odinga spoke in the Luo. In fact, what came to us was an interpretation of what Raila Odinga was saying in his village as he went to a funeral somewhere. Therefore, for my colleague here to pretend that he did not hear Raila Odinga say what he said, that he was accompanying President Uhuru Kenyatta to China to secure financing for SGR so that SGR can get to Kisumu, we revive the Kisumu port, and all those things are good things. It's good political rhetoric to tell to the people. But I think there comes a time when, as leaders, and I say this because my colleague here wasn't very forthright with the truth, and so was Raila Odinga. I think there comes a time when, as leaders, we become forthright and tell our people the truth. And he just said that if you were to ask me off the cuff, and I want to tell you, Anthony, there's nothing I will not say on this table that I will say off the cuff.
Okay.
In terms of viability of the line, and Chris has told you, it's something we went through a lot when I was Vice Chair of the Public Investments Committee in the 11th Parliament. And the viability of Mombasa-Nairobi was never in question, because as I told you, 70% of the cargo terminates in Nairobi, was destined for Nairobi and its environs. Therefore, if you listen, I think a month or a month and a half ago, I did hear the Cabinet Secretary also say that in another 3 months, the line, Mombasa-Nairobi line, would be able now to break even through cargo business. Therefore, its viability is not in question. The last point is why Naivasha? Why Naivasha? If you looked at the Jubilee Manifesto, there was talk of having an industrial park in Naivasha. And why Naivasha and not Kikuyu, again, was informed by factors such as accessibility to cheaper sources of power. Remember the geothermal plants around Naivasha or Karia. And therefore, we are looking at a situation where you have accessibility to power. You'll be able to ship in raw materials from the port of Mombasa, quickly evacuate it to Naivasha, where you encourage people to set up industries and be able to produce cheaper. And again, Naivasha being very close to Nairobi, for those who are even producing in Nairobi, it is very easy for you to go to a special economic zone and industrial park in Naivasha.
Allow me to Mheshimiwa Kimani, we'll come back with that comment, because you need to take a short break now, but you can text us your views on 22422 as well as Twitters at Citizen TV Kenya at Sam Gituko and at
Zinzi_K, or you can even call in on 0719 777 777.
All right, back in a moment.